Everyone did? I never did. Never begged for money. Swear to God, never. Never. From scammer to beggar?
Hey guys,
Yeah.
what's up? MadSeason here, back
basically.
with another video for you. We're finishing off the profession guide here, so let's get right into it. In part 1, we covered all of the gathering professions, and also alchemy, blacksmithing, and engineering.
The only ones
and
that are
today,
important.
we're finishing it off with enchanting, leatherworking, tailoring, the secondary professions, and at the end, I'll also give you my personal picks for each class.
Okay.
Starting off here though, let's talk about enchanting. Enchanters buff up your gear with stat boosts and even weapon procs. Today, it's just rings and weapons pretty much, but in Classic, you'll find that you have a plethora of different slots that you can enchant your gear with. Your cloak, your chest, bracers, gloves, boots, your shield, and weapons are all enchantable with...
See, they should do this now. Like, I don't know why they took out enchants. Like, you can't fucking enchant your gear. You can't reforge it. You can't put gems in it. You can't do all of this other shit. Every single piece of gear, you should have like 2 or 3 things you can do to it to make it more interesting. This is the way it was. In Mists of Pandaria, this is how it was. Like, I always complain and, you know, talk shit about Mists of Pandaria, but I genuinely do think that was one of the high points, was character customization. You could do so many different cool fucking things with your character back then, with, like, gear and everything, and I liked it a lot. Gear, yeah, sockets, everything. Like, Titan Forge it? That wasn't until later. They didn't have Titan Forging in Mists.
The variety of boons.
It's fucking great.
And even what you enchant is much more diverse. Not just main stats like agility or strength, but also things such as spell power, increased mana, healing power, mana regeneration, defense skill, dodge chance, elemental resistances, stealth, fishing skill. Remember earlier when I said that these professions are much more substantial?
Hey.
It's ridiculous how many enchants there are. And you'll make a lot of friends if you go to the trouble of tracking down all of the rare patterns. And of course, copious amounts of gold. The only guy I knew who hit the gold cap back in vanilla, which I believe was 214,000, was an enchanter. He was—
No fucking way, dude. No fucking way did anybody hit the gold cap in vanilla WoW. I remember there was this one time, this guy, what was this? It was like in Burning Crusade, the first time somebody ever hit gold cap. And it was this hunter, and they wrote an article about it. It was like a dwarf or like some sort of hunter. They did. Find me some evidence, man. Nobody fucking did.
Sort of the extreme because he was in the #1 guild for a faction. This was back when enchanting patterns dropped off of high-level raid bosses.
No fucking way.
Particularly, you'll find a bunch in the AQ40 raid when that unlocks. So at the time, the supply was very limited. And for those who know basic economics, know that having a monopoly equates to tons of gold. I'm a believer that the raids will be cleared much quicker this time around, so I don't think it'll be as extreme, but I mean, you can only clear them once a week still. Regardless, it'll be a good moneymaker, especially if you know what you're doing. Some popular enchants would be Crusader, which was a strength proc for melee.
We need to get this
You
for
needed
me.
Righteous Orbs,
I
which
really
you got
need to
from
get
the
that for
Strathel
myself.
dungeon mainly. I spent quite a while in that place just for those. And agility was a good one for hunters and for the offhands of rogues.
agi.
And you also have spell power and healing power for the casters, and all of those various stat increases I listed earlier. And they can also make weapon oils, which are sort of the equivalent to the blacksmith's sharpening stones and weight stones. These increase spell power and spell crit for caster DPS, or mana per 5 and healing power for healers. Something to note here is that this is before the advent of vellums. You can't simply enchant one and throw it on the auction house. To enchant...
You just, what you would do is you just simply enchant the same fucking thing over and over. Like, you'd try to literally, like, you'd be like, you'd find some level 2, be like, hey man, put your gloves in trade. And you give them like plus like, you know, 5 agi, and you're like, oh my god, thanks mister. And you're like, yeah, sure bro, no problem man, have fun. And then you'd ask him for like, you know, half of his copper, which is like 5. And that was basically how it used to work.
You have to put it in the do not trade window, and you enchant it from there. A downside, obviously, is that it's a little more cumbersome, but a plus is that it promotes more interaction between players, which is one of the main aspects you'll find with the game. I actually prefer it this way, if you ask me. You may be wondering what profession to pair this one with, as herbing, mining, and skinning aren't related. Usually it's tailoring, and that's because it's really the only self-sufficient crafting profession. You get the materials for tailor just by looting cloth, and you can make green items to disenchant to stock up on enchanting materials, but we'll talk more about that later. Next up though, we have leatherworking. This is the leather and mail counterpart to the blacksmith, of course aimed for the shaman, rogue, and druid, and hunter, and you can also make some miscellaneous stuff, such as quivers and ammo pouches for the hunters, and a selection of cloaks. Similar to the blacksmith, we have a variety of resistance gear that you can craft, which will be crucial in raiding. The fashion is questionable,
wow, you can look
but
like
hey,
that.
it gets the job done, I suppose.
What a fucking idiot.
On a serious note though, you're going to want at least one of these in your guild to equip everyone with the proper gear, whether it be for fire, frost, or nature resistance. They also made the Onyxia skill cloak, which as I mentioned earlier, is required for the Nefarian fight in the Blackwing Lair. They can also make armor kits to upgrade your chest, legs, hand, or feet gear slots, the most useful of which being the core armor kit, which provides a boost in defense, but you need a rare pattern for that from the Molten Core raid. Aside from that though, you just have a bunch of good gear in general that you can make for leveling or the early end game. They have a few sets here and there that'll be best in slot for that pre-raid gearing. It's also another profession that's split up into 3 specialties, and that's tribal, elemental, and dragon skill leatherworking, each catering to certain classes.
I forgot all about this
Elemental and tribal are for leather wearers, so druids and rogues here. Usually, agility wearers go for tribal, mainly because of the Devil Sar set, but you also have the Corehound belt pattern, which is your fire resist intellect belt. And as for elemental, you have the Storm Shroud set.
Oh, this is like
I think
for
tanking
shamans,
druids
right?
used a couple pieces of this, although it's not too great, so don't get too crazy with that.
For druids.
And you also have more fire resist gear in general, which is handy, but they're also quite expensive to make, so it's kind of rough. Again though, I'll have links to each recipe for these in the description.
Damn.
And dragon skill is your male specialization, so hunters and shamans here. Here's some examples of what they can make.
Bunch of garbage, basically.
So the biggest strength of leatherworking is going to be that resistance gear. It really depends on how much you value that initial gearing process, I guess. Maybe when the game first launches, you put more value in it, but as the game progresses and better raids come out, that balance is going to shift more and more away from these pre-raid items. Although that's not entirely true, as there are some patterns to be released with certain raids. As for gold making, just the gear in general is going to be your moneymaker. As I mentioned, they have certain items that are early best in slot for certain classes. One of their more powerful ones being that Devil Sword 2-piece set, which I showed in the tribal section. I remember that rogues always wanted this before stepping into raiding. And you also have that core armor kit that I mentioned earlier.
This is actually really good.
Now the pattern for this isn't easy.
Yeah, this is
it's a drop from the Molten Core raid, so it might take a while, but once you...
I think this is whenever it got buffed up and it did the stat squish. Permanently increase the defense value. Oh, defense value. I thought it said armor by 3. Never mind. I got confused
It'll be one
myself.
of the more steady ways of earning gold as a leather worker. Of course, the earlier you get it, the better. I also mentioned earlier that engineers could make leather workers a salt shaker. Using this and some deep rock salt, every 3 days you can create some refined salt, which you need for cured rugged hide, which is used for a variety of recipes. Since it's on a cooldown, it gains some value, so it's another thing you can just pop once every 3 days for some easy gold. One of the ultimate lazy man methods would be to have a bunch of alchemists and leather workers, and have just one character's herbing and alchemy to feed yourself materials to level all of it, and just keep spamming these cooldowns for some near passive gold. It is easier said than done, since leveling is so time consuming.
Wait, you can have a gorilla as a pet in Classic?
Hey, there it is. And lastly, for non-gathering professions, we have the tailor, which is everything to do with cloth. Armor, bags, and also the cosmetic shirts. In terms of gear, we have a similar story going on with leatherworking. You have a ton of resistance gear, which is always going to be crucial. Fire, frost, and nature, and a bunch of leveling and general raiding gear. Some items...
I want to draw attention to something. I just said gorilla in the chat. And nobody posted tryhard or anything like that. Nobody made any racist connotations at all. Good job, number one. Great job, guys. Didn't even bring it up. the idea that these like stupid little spurgs are going to just go over and use another black person emote if you ban the one that's obviously associated with racism, clearly disproven right there. They don't have a plan B. The only plan B they have is the one their mom should have used.
Of note are the Robe of the Void for Warlocks, True Faith Vestments, the Robes of the Archmage, and the Robes of Winter Knight are some of the higher level craftables, to name just a few.
That's actually really
You also have
good.
things like the Spider Belt, which is quite handy for PvP, so that'll be a good moneymaker. The main difference this time is that tailoring doesn't have any sort of specialization to spec into, which sets it apart from
They did that
blacksmithing
in
and leatherworking.
BC, right?
So a little less depth, I
Like
think,
frost sweep
but
and
also
spell
more
weave
freedom
tailoring,
since you
I
can
think.
learn every single pattern. It just depends on your perspective, I guess. They also, of course, make bags, which are always in high demand. We did get some profession bags in vanilla, such as the herb satchels and enchanting bags and whatnot, and even soul shard bags for the warlocks, but also the normal bags, obviously.
Yeah, I'm waiting, Jimmy, for the service
Your
to come
biggest
up.
one being the bottomless bag, which requires a rare pattern. And
This shit for Mooncloth, that I remember whatever it was, that shit was expensive. Like, it's up? Oh, is it really? Okay, well, I'll finish the video and then we'll probably get ready for, servers back up? Okay, well, let me go ahead and I'll relog and see if it's going to work, okay? And, I'll see if I can log back in. Okay, great. All right, yeah, we'll have to get ready for Sunken Temple soon. Let me finish this video and then we'll have to start it. Hopefully Asfond will still be able to go and we'll have the group.
a ton of materials, but again, if you can get the pattern, you're all set. As for gold making, the big market is going to be your most steady source of income. Certain pieces of gear will be in higher demand than others, especially in the pre-raid gearing, and as these raids release, you can bet on resistance gear always seeing a surge in activity. And they do also have a cooldown mechanic like alchemists and leatherworkers. This
See, that's what that. All right, I'll be right back, dude. I love that shit where you can turn Mooncloth into Fellcloth, or like the other way around. That was great. Sorry about that, boys. I'm back.
time, it's mooncloth. Every 4 days, you can purify 2 fell cloths into 1 mooncloth, and this is used for a variety of high-level gear, and also that bottomless bag that I mentioned earlier. So another good choice for the lazy man's way of earning gold. The only caveat here is that you can only craft it at these moon wells, which are located throughout the world. Not as hardcore as the Alchemy lab though, since it's all outdoor content, so
Imagine having to go to different places to craft different pieces of gear because that would make sense in the lore. Like vanilla WoW made sense. And I know like, oh, well, yeah, sure. Oh, it makes sense that you can magically summon a horse out of nowhere and cast fireballs. Yes, obviously there are some instances of it not completely making sense. But overall, it made a lot more fucking sense than the later expansions did. After Wrath, shit stopped making sense. That's the truth. They stopped caring about continuity.
it's all soloable. And lastly for this video, I'd like to cover the secondary professions. These are professions that everyone can and should get. You don't need to choose between these or anything else, and there are no downsides to learning them.
They disabled the
That's
Wrath
cooking,
Evasive.
fishing, and first aid.
Fucking stupid.
Talking about cooking and fishing here first, these really go hand in hand. Cooking was pretty much designed to be leveled from fishing, so you definitely want to have both of these. For fishing, you fish. It's pretty self-explanatory. In Classic, it's more time-consuming. Over the years, they've sped up fishing to make it more appealing to players, but in Classic, you'll find that your cast bar moves much more slowly, so it requires a lot more patience.
Imagine thinking, why do people not like fishing? It's because it's fucking boring. Why are there not boats that allow you to travel out into fatigued land in the game and hunt whale sharks? Like, why is that not in the game? What are you doing, Blizzard? Where the fuck is that? Like, yeah, come on. Like, that'd be fucking amazing.
But it's also important because, like I said, you use it to level cooking, and there are also some fish that you need for alchemy, so if you took that profession, that's all the more reason to learn and level this. And there's also the Stranglethorn Vale fishing tournament, which has some unique prizes tied to it. This is, of course, the weekly
That's where you
fishing
get the heroin
extravaganza, where
and
everyone rushes to the
teleporting
Stranglethorn
boots.
Vale zone and race to collect 40 speckled tasty fish.
Delicious.
The first person to turn them in
tasty.
gets some nifty rewards. It's always quite a fun and hectic time, even more so in Classic,
Nobody gave a
since
shit
the
about that
traveling
back then.
options are much more limited. There's also the Gazranka boss in the Zul'Gurub raid. You need fishing to summon them, so you'll
What
want
I'm going to do to get the fishing tournament done is I'm going to hire people on the opposite faction to kill every single person that's trying to fish up the fish so I get them first. And then I'm going to have my guild kill people on the other faction that are also trying to fish. And I'll figure out every single different area we can get, and I will make sure that I get the thing. And like that, listen, dude, they'll just kill you? No, they won't. I'll give them money. Because how are they going to, like, why would they kill me? Like, they're not going to get any money for that.
to bring at least one
how's that
master
toxic?
angler along with you
Yeah,
when
fishing
you step
mafia.
foot into this place.
It's against TOS.
You can also fish up some Rumsy Rum, which is an alcohol buff. You can have one alcohol buff in Classic, and
That's
this is the
actually
best stamina
ridiculously
one,
good.
giving you 15 for 15 minutes. And as for cooking, food buffs are still a thing in Classic, just as important back then as they are now, and some popular ones will be the grilled squid for agility wares, which, what do you know, the materials for
Holy
which
shit.
require fishing. The smoked
actually really
desert
good.
dumplings for strength users,
Wait.
and you also have Dirge's Kickin' Chimeric Chops for your stamina, but
Wow.
you'll only get the recipe for this once the AQ40 event starts.
Yep.
There
I
really
have
aren't
it.
any huge differences between current and Classic
It's worth like
as far
5
as its
million
main
gold now.
functionality goes. You cook
Maybe even
food,
more.
and you get food buffs. Pretty simple. For both cooking and fishing, the gold making potential is quite high, as there will always be people who are too lazy to cook their own food, or alchemists who don't want to level fishing. You can always make money by selling high-end
Hey.
stat food, or just the raw fish. Fishing is actually pretty powerful in the fact of how simple it is. You don't need any special recipes, or flip anything on the auction house. You just need a bit of patience, that's all.
Which is how it
Heck,
should be.
you don't even need to be high level. There are low-level fish that you can make a killing off of, and if you want to afford your mount training by 40, this will probably be one of the best professions for that. And as for first aid, this is now actually removed from the current game, and not only is it present in Classic, but it's actually extremely vital,
Hey.
even if you're a healing class. This profession
thanks,
is
Blizzard.
based around the use of bandages
Really
and
appreciate that.
anti-venom, and it serves as a way for on-the-fly healing, no matter the class. I say that this is more important simply due to the lack of overall self-healing in the Classic game. Today, every single class has a way of healing themselves. The Crimson Vial for rogues,
Yep.
Victory Rush for warriors,
Yep.
or Acceleration for hunters, and so on.
Yep.
In Classic, however, you don't have any of this stuff, so any form of healing is going to be that much more valuable.
Yeah, when Warriors
It's
got
the reason
self-healing, it
why
was
it was
great.
removed in the current game. Once everyone got all of those self-heals, no one really used first aid anymore. You can bandage not only yourself,
I think you
but
stopped
also
using
other
first aid
players,
and-
as long as neither of you are getting hit.
After Caddy,
so
you
it's
stopped
mainly
using
used
it.
out of combat,
Maybe after
or when
Wrath.
the enemy's attention is elsewhere.
I'd say that.
And this is
yeah.
of course multiplied 10 times over in PvP. As a rogue, your wombo combo will be to blind your opponent and get off a full bandage before you re-stealth. And the same for mages with polymorph, warlocks with fear, and so on. Its gold making potential, as you'd guess, is next to nothing. You need first aid for the bandages, so the demand really isn't there. But that's about it. In summary, you've probably gathered just how much more depth and impact these professions used to have. To kill Nefarian, you needed a healthy stock of Onyxia skill cloaks, and to make the cloaks you needed a leatherworker, but to learn the recipe, you need to kill her first and turn in her head, and to get the skills you need a skinner, but to skin her you need a special dagger, which only drops off a level 60 boss. And that's not even getting into all of the resist gear that you can only craft, or the creation of the legendaries, Thunder Fury, or the Hand of Ragnaros. Whether it be from going into certain specializations, or getting those ultra rare patterns, you can really spend a lot of time honing your professions and exploring what they have to offer. They also promote more interaction in general, from things like the lack of vellums, so only trade window enchants, to flasks requiring alchemy labs, which of course you need other players to clear to, but also in the sense that many of your recipes will need items from other professions. You need enchanted leather to make this item, so okay, I need to find a skinner and an enchanter then. That, combined with the more time-consuming leveling and thus fewer alts, it promotes a much more social experience where you have to network with other master craftsmen, and it has quite a big effect on the community as a whole.
So it's like real life.
And another thing, just really quickly here, is that the way you train these professions is also a bit different.
Yep.
Back then, they were split up into 4 levels, and that's Apprentice, Journeyman, Expert, and Artisan, and each of these increased your maximum skill by 75, up to the base maximum, which is 300, and they each have the following level requirements. Some trainers are quite hidden or require quests to unlock, like the ones tied to those certain specializations, for example, but I won't go super in depth there because this video is already way too long, but I did kind of gloss over that earlier, so I just thought I'd mention it really quickly here. And I did say that I wanted to give my personal picks for each class. Keep in mind that this is just me. A lot of this is really just based on preference and how much you care about min-maxing both PvE and PvP.
Nope.
Speaking of which though, if you really do want to min-max, you're going to want to pick up engineering.
Absolutely.
With enchanting, alchemy, or blacksmith and so on, you don't really need those professions to get benefits from them for the most part. You just need to pay more gold to other players for the consumables or enchants or whatever. But for engineer, you need it to be able to use all of their bombs and whatnot. For PvP, you're mostly interested in the ones that have AoE incapacitates, and also some of the gadgets such as the Death Ray or the Rocket Helmet, to name just 2. And for PvE, you want that Sapper Charge for that AoE damage, and maybe the Battle Chicken for the group-wide speed buff if you're willing to sacrifice that trinket slot.
That's really
In terms of performance in raids and PvP, Engineer is going to be a must if you care about min-maxing, so I'll just throw that out there. And this goes for every single class too. But let's assume that you don't care about that, in which case my personal choices would be this. And keep in mind, this is assuming you're just picking one class here. Like, you probably don't want more than one enchanter across your entire account, right?
Yeah, this makes sense.
For cloth wearers, I just go for tailoring and enchanting.
It's a good choice.
Tailoring is pretty self-explanatory. You can make a lot of your own gear leveling up, and some nice early endgame items if you get the patterns, and also bags for gold. Enchanting is nice as well, not only for yourself, but also for making some gold. You can always play the auction house and find some cheap greens, and flip them into essences for a profit, or just have one character to send all your greens to from all of your alts to keep yourself stocked up. For the rogue, I actually like herbalism and alchemy. Alchemy is good for any class really, but my mindset here for rogue is that their thistle tea and their blinding powder both require certain herbs. You need swift thistle for the tea and fade leaf for the blinding powder, so having herbalism and alchemy just gives them more synergy, and it saves you some gold off the auction house. You can choose to go leatherworking and skinning if you want, but I prefer that on a druid just to optimize things. Obviously, the mindset here is with druids being leatherwearers, you can make some of your own gear. Leatherworker is sort of thought of as the weakest profession of them all, but that may also be their strength. It'll probably be more rare, so things should balance out. And again, that Onyxia skill cloak is going to be a must. I do also have alchemy and herbing for shaman as well for you horde players out there. Again though, leatherworking and skinning also isn't a bad choice. Same logic for the druid really. For the hunter, I have engineer and mining.
Mining?
Not really for the guns, since most of the good endgame weapons are actually bows for the most part, but just because hunters have that dead zone in Classic. If enemies get too close to you, you can't shoot them, so I see those grenades as being vital for them more so than the other classes. And again, remember, even if you don't use guns, you do have those trade-ins for arrows in your major cities. And lastly, for Paladin and Warrior, I have good old mining and blacksmithing. Pretty self-explanatory here. Big heavy plate melee classes having professions that make big heavy plate and melee weapons. Really though, for any of these classes, you could also interchange alchemy and herbalism, since those are sort of one-size-fits-all professions. For gold making, as I said, I really like that lazy man's approach, so if you really wanted to go ham with that and level a bunch of characters, you can pick up either alchemy, leatherworking, or tailoring on all of your characters for those cooldowns. And of course one character having herbalism and skinning to serve as a farmer to level them all up. With this method, you can just keep track of your timers and flip items from the auction house or trade chat for that one-click profit. It will take about 4 years to get going, although to learn the artisan level of these professions, you only need level 35, so maybe not as time-consuming as most would think. But that's about it. I know that these videos are way longer than they needed to be.
Thank you.
It's kind of funny how I always set out for these videos to be catered towards beginners, and they always end up being nearly an hour long.
They're super complex.
I think it just goes to show just how much depth they have in Classic. But if you thought I skipped over some stuff and you'd like a more in-depth guide profession by profession, I highly recommend the YouTube channel Frostadamus, because he's covered every single one pretty thoroughly.
Just trade me the gold. I can't.
I'll have a link to the playlist in the description for you. I hope that this gave you a good overall look at the professions as a whole though, and that it helped you narrow down your choices. If it did, I do have other guides aimed towards beginners that you may find handy.
Thanks, dude.
I have one for class picking and 2 more for race picking for both the Horde and Alliance. And I'll have those linked in the description if you're curious.
Whoa, bro!
Anyways, I hope you found the video helpful. Like it if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.
This was a great video. I really liked it a lot. Frostadamus is pretty good videos too. I've watched his too. Like now that I watch these...
Farewell for now, mortals. We hope you enjoyed today's video. See you again.
There's a video.
Soon.
Okay, yeah, so I really liked this video, obviously. It was really, really great. I thought it was very well put together. Like, Mad Season does some of the best WoW videos that are out there, in my opinion. I think they're very... It has, like, the right mix of, you know, informative content with just, like, a really good atmosphere, and I do really, really like his content. He's probably one of the best, you know, content creators out there on YouTube right now. So everybody should, you know, click that link and give him a follow and or a sub, and like the video if you liked it.